What's up guys, it's Pliskin here. On this channel, I've made a lot of videos talking about weapon balancing in video games. What I think is good, what I think is bad. Today I want to talk about what I feel is a underrated conversation topic when it comes to discussing weapon balancing. Balancing by genre. So, for the sake of this video, we're going to take two very different games, Far Cry 3 and Silent Hill 3, and discuss how they balance their weapons to their genre. How do they make their weapons suit the experience they are trying to craft? So with that in mind, let's get right on into it. Far Cry 3 is first and foremost a stealth action game. The player is supposed to be empowered through gameplay. You are supposed to go into Far Cry 3 having fun and conquering your environment. This shows up in the themes, this shows up in the direct story, and of course, this shows up in how you interact with the world, mostly through your weapons. So first up, let's go over your knife. Now, your knife in this game is pretty much your go-to stealth weapon. You always have it on you from the start, it doesn't take up any equipment slots, and it's extremely easy to use. All you have to do is press the right stick when the prompt shows up. It's a very quick, swift action, and the only difficult part that you have to go through in order to do this is position yourself within the appropriate range and make sure you don't get spotted. Now, as you go on throughout Far Cry 3, you start unlocking more takedowns with this knife. You can start stabbing guys from below, from above. You can throw knives after you stabbed a guy. You can drag him into cover. You can whip out a weapon while using the stab animation. Your options keep opening up. And while it's easy to talk about only the guns and explosives that show up in Far Cry 3, the knife is a really core part of that experience of making you feel powerful, because just at the click of the button, even towards the beginning of the game, you take an enemy down. It takes a little less than 2 seconds in order to do this. Now let's go over to Silent Hill 3. In this game, you get a very varied range of melee weapons. It's not just a knife, you get a katana, you get a maul, you get a lead pipe. There's a lot of different melee weapons here. And while in base concept, the melee weapon is used in the same way, getting close and then killing your enemy by stabbing or hitting them with this weapon, in Silent Hill 3, it functions a very different way to accomplish a very different purpose. You see, whereas Far Cry 3 is a power fantasy where you wage your own guerrilla war on this pirate faction, Silent Hill 3 is first and foremost a horror experience, meant to make you feel isolated, alone, helpless, like you have to really fight for your own survival. And it accomplishes this through a lot of different things, but for today's video, we're going to be talking about weapons, so let's get back specifically to how it balances these melee weapons. Now, I play this game on the easiest difficulty because I might be a scared little bitch. And if I played this on any harder difficulty, it would be very difficult for me to go throughout the entire game. Yet still, when I get close to these enemies, it's never a one-shot kill. Instead, it's a much more intense experience of holding down the attack button to have Heather prepare an attack, and then manually have to slash or swipe or stab at each enemy over and over again until eventually they hit the ground. And after they hit the ground, it's not over because they will get back up. You have to kick them with your boot until you are absolutely sure that they are dead. This is a very different experience than just pressing R3 to stab. This is not a power fantasy, this is a struggle, and a struggle is what you want the player to go through when surviving a horror experience. Let's talk about how these two games balance pistols. Taking this back to Far Cry 3, let's take the starter 1911. Now this is a great balanced pistol for an action game. While you can go around and take on enemies with, I think it's around 3 shots to kill your standard pirate, You can go around and take on groups of them if you're smart, if you're moving from cover to cover, using grenades, but you will have to reload often as this weapon only carries 7 rounds, but it's powerful enough to get you by. It has a decent enough range, it's a competent sidearm. However, where this 1911 really shines is when you're using a different weapon, for example, one of the game's rifles, and you're taking on a bunch of enemies, and if the enemy is just staggered, or if the group of them is starting to swarm you and you run out of ammo, you can whip to your 1911 really fast, put the finishing shots on the staggered enemy, and take off whatever stragglers are left over from that group. This is a brilliantly way to balance a pistol because it reinforces it as that idea of a sidearm. And again, this empowers you because even when your back's up against the wall and your weapon runs out of ammunition, you whip out another weapon and just finish off the enemies with ease. Moving over to Silent Hill 3 again, we have the classic Beretta, which for some reason only holds 10 rounds, even though the actual weapon holds 15. This was popular to do back in the early days of survival horror. It was like Resident Evil had the 10 round pistol rule, and they moved it over to Silent Hill and they used the same copy of Beretta. But let's not focus on the inaccuracies of the weapon, but let's take a look at this 10 round slow firing pistol rule. When you whip out your Beretta in Silent Hill 3, it's competent. It will stagger your enemies. It'll stop them from advancing towards you, and if you're bringing this out, odds are you're kind of creeped out and you don't want whatever's coming at you to get any closer. So it fulfills its job of making you feel a little bit safe while still having to confront the horrors. However, it's not the fast-paced, just ping your enemies down kind of weapon like the 1911. Again, it's slower. When you have to reload it, most of the time you're going into the actual main menu and painstakingly pressing the buttons needed to reload the weapon. You need to stand still. The fixed camera position makes it so that you can't really aim down your sights or feel very precise. It's just a general kind of squeeze the trigger and hope feeling. So both of these pistols are balanced great for their games. However, do you see how the 1911 functions as a supplementary quick speed weapon, whereas the Beretta focuses more as a slow firing heavy hitter that staggers the opponent? So they both function as a sidearm, except one empowers you by giving you another option, whereas the other one is more so just of a slight comfort when your back's up against the wall. This idea also extends to the main weapons that you use throughout the game. For example, in Far Cry 3, let's take the 1887 shotgun. This is a very aggressive weapon. This is for when you don't want to go stealthy and you want to charge into the enemy's head first and have every single shot be a certified kill. You don't need to aim, but you have the option to increase your range. It's not necessarily the fastest weapon, but that slow recocking time is worth it for the damage you're getting. You have the potential to take out multiple enemies at once. With this gun, you are a predator. Moving over to Silent Hill 3 once again, the pump action shotgun, although these two guns fulfill a very similar role, getting up close and personal with your enemy and just taking them down with a very heavy shot, in Silent Hill 3, you're not really a predator. You feel like prey that's hiding behind this shotgun. The enemies are coming towards you, and you're using that shotgun to ward them away. It still packs a punch, but it's not the multiple life-ending single round shotgun of Far Cry 3. This is just your hardcore punch weapon for when the bigger enemies come towards you, you have something, again, to hide behind. So in summary, you have two very different genres that while they might feature weapons that are almost the exact same, they will never feel the exact same because how a weapon feels and behaves is dependent on the genre of the game. If you were to give Heather the 1887 from Far Cry 3, Silent Hill 3 would be a hell of a lot less scary. If you were to give Jason the pistol from Silent Hill 3, where he has to sit there with that horror game Beretta and just fire over and over again, slowly, while taking like almost 10 shots to take down a single basic enemy, you would never pick up that gun again in Far Cry 3. It would have no place there in an action game. So yeah, I just wanted to point this out to you guys. Are there any other genre-specific weapon balancing tropes that you have noticed? If so, what are your favorites? And can we get some love for Silent Hill 3 in the comments? I haven't finished it yet, but I started playing through it and holy god, it's blown my socks off. I'm not a big fan of horror games, but I'm really glad I picked this one up and tried it. A review might be coming in the future, but with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed, learned something new, or at least thought about something that you've already known in a different way. This has been Bliskin, over and out.